Hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And a video using some of the new release from Altenew for August. I will have a link to the new release in the description box below the video. Always worth checking out. So many fun new products. For today's video, I am focusing on the Craft Your Life project kit, which, as the title of the video says, the name of the kit is Floral Odyssey. All the cards I made were non-floral, which will make sense. It'll make sense. I'm going to flip the camera down and we'll just kind of do a walk through the kit. And then, of course, I'll show you guys the cards I made. Like always, links to everything I used will be in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links and end up placing an order, I do get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. That is what helps pay the bills, keeps the lights on, enables me to keep bringing out content. And then this is also part of a video hop. All that info will be in the doobly-doo down below as well. And yeah, let's take a look at the kit. So let's go. There we go. So this is the Floral Odyssey Craft Your Life project kit. You've got a big 6x8 stamp set with all these big floral images, whole bunch of sentiments. I always love like the mix of fonts, things like that. So you got the stamp set. There is a stencil set, which there's a lot of stencils in this. So 2 of them are like part of the floral, and then the rest look very weird. But these coordinate with the 3D embossing folder, which is also called Floral Odyssey. But this embossing folder, it took me a second when I first saw it. I was like, it's like a bird's eye view, you know? So you've got like the road and like houses and stuff. I think it's so neat. So then the stencils are meant to color this in, and I'm going to show that in the video. So there's that. And then there's the die set. And the die set is all these pieces to create compasses. Who'da thunk? My mind was kind of blown. And then there's a weird little shaped die. This is to cut out an opening. And I was like, trying to get my head around it. That's where you can use the stencils. And there's etch lines there in these 2 stencils. So you can use these to line up the stamps. And then you create like a pattern. And then there's this opening. So then you've got that, and you can use the die to die cut that, and then you could like make a shaker, just create a little window, etc. And there's examples in the packaging and stuff as always. So all that to say, there's also an add-on. This isn't part of the kit. This is an add-on die set. So there is an add-on die set that will die cut. So you could even skip the stencils and just die cut everything and like layer it up, and then it also die cuts like the larger like phrases and whatnot in the set. Love. So that's the kit in a nutshell. And like I said, I didn't use the florals at all. I thought I was gonna, but I was having so much fun with the embossing folder and then building compasses. It was fun. So I will splice everything together, and then I will show you guys how I made my cards. So yeah, like I said, I am basically concentrating on this embossing folder because it is different from anything I have ever owned in card making, things like that. It just fascinates me. So for Altenew's embossing folders and the my Anna Griffin Empress die cutting machine, what I find works best is one cutting plate, the folder and the cardstock, and then the magnetic plate. And then run it through your machine, and you've got your embossed image. So I did this on this was like Neenah 80-pound classic crest smooth white, I think. And I'd cut it to like 6x6 inches just to make the stenciling easier. This is another one of those products, and this kind of applies to a lot of products, not just with Altenew, but many brands. When you've got, like a layering stencil, like multi-layers, or same with like a layering die set, things like that, stamp set, etc. It does really help to kind of do a test run. Even if there's like the guide, like Altenew's got the layering guide, it's in the packaging for the stamp set in this kit. but it always helps to kind of do just a test run. Like, don't think you need to like finish it, get it perfect the first time. It just, at least for me, it helps. It helps kind of like get my brain working, and it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense. You know, this part goes here, this goes here, yada yada. And with this stencil set, the first two stencils are pretty obvious. Like the first one fits in, it just kind of nestles in to the raised areas of all the shrubbery. And then this second stencil adds kind of the darker elements and sort of the shadows and whatnot. And there's a couple spots I could have used a different color because it's actually part of one of the little houses, but I did it all one color. It was easier, and it doesn't matter. I loosely was following the colors suggested. That's another thing, is like with Altenew's packaging, it'll list all the colors shown with the directions, etc. And that also helps too sometimes for just that test run to do that. And then again, you just kind of figure it out. So I sort of loosely followed it, but I actually made it even simpler and used less colors, because this stencil, this is where it gets a little like the very first time. It's hard to see on camera, but there are, of course, etch lines, and they're kind of surrounding different areas, and they're labeled. And it explains it too in the guide, like how to, like the directions you go and things like that. And at first glance, I was like, what? What? But then it just makes sense. And again, it's labeled. Like along the top, it says things like H1A, H1B, H1C. And I was like, But it's house 1A. That's the first layer. Then B is the second layer, and C is the third. And then there's other parts for the other little house areas. And once you've done it once, it just makes perfect sense. So I used some Post-it tape just to mask off some of the little areas, because we're going to have to like move the stencil around a little bit. And just because, once I get going, usually I'm not paying attention. So masking them off was just the safer version. But yeah, again, I just kept it simple and kind of kept like all the little road areas to one color, but you could definitely like mix things up a bit. And yeah, once you start like moving the stencil around, it was like, oh, like the way they've like etched out the little details, they literally like kind of fit in like a puzzle piece. It's hard to explain, but once I started, like, I moved it around a tiny little bit, and I was like, oh, this goes here, this goes here. It all starts to make sense. So watching it come together, I don't know, it was just weirdly satisfying. It's the bird's eye view. Does anyone do that when you're sitting on a plane and you actually happen to have a window seat, and when you're taking off and landing and like looking down at the ground, this is what you see. And I don't know. I don't get to travel much, so the few, very, very few times I do, it's one of my favorite parts. It's fun. So anyway, I went around and did my stenciling, and I was just using the mini blending brushes, and all the colors you can see there, just using my little ink stand. And again, just a limited number of colors, and kept it simple. And another thing you can't really see at all, there's also like texture. Like on all the open areas that I just left white, the embossing folder adds texture to it too, which is cool. And then another thing to note that I noticed with this release, the die set's got a plastic insert now with all the outlines printed on it. Yes, thank you. I love that. My little bit of OCD that I have is so very satisfied. And then it also helps to make sure it's like, okay, I've got all the dies. They're back, because I keep everything always in the packaging. It's just easier that way. And love it. Love it. Anyway, again, for this first compass, I pretty much followed the step-by-step directions, even with the colors. Because again, it's one of those things where there's a whole lot of pieces, because there's a whole lot of options. And once you get going, well, at least once I got going, I couldn't stop. So I used the Misty Moor cardstock. These are all Altenew cardstocks. Marshland, Citronella, Green Gold, Milk Chocolate, Cloudy Sky, and Nimbus. No, Cloudy Sky and Nimbus I use on the next compass. We'll get to that. So I used for this one, it was the Misty Moor, Marshland, Citronella, the Green Gold, Milk Chocolate, and then white and black. And die cut all my pieces. And then adhered them together. So we've got little like deboss details, things like that. A fine tip glue helps. If you're Another option, if you don't like dealing with liquid glue and you happen to have something like a Xyron machine or double-sided adhesive, you could put that on the back of your cardstock and then die cut it. So then all you'd have to do is peel and stick. I have no problem with liquid glue, so this is just what works for me. And then also with die sets like this that have just little pieces, tweezers, man, game changer. I use my reverse tweezers. I know Altenew's got a pair, like their tweezers are like super fine tipped. They're really pointy. I need to get a pair of those. I think those would come in handy. But yeah, the little tweezers just to hold the little die cut pieces, add little bits of glue. And then for this first one, I was just following the directions, and I can't kid, man. This was fun. Who'd have thought building a compass? You know, same thing. Never had anything like this. And I've been making cards for over 20 years now. So I think the novelty of it all too was just super fun. So, and I love, normally, and I've talked about this, I'm not the biggest fan of little fiddly die cuts. I had so much fun. I was only going to make, I was like, I'll just do one compass, you know, I'll make one card with this and I'll like do the florals. And then I couldn't stop. Adding the little northeast, southwest, I don't know. I got so much ridiculous satisfaction. So, yeah, they're ridiculous and yet in the best way. And if you're people at Scrapbook, this is a really good set for that because I was like, oh, there's so many ideas. So many ideas. Anyway, the other thing with this release that, again, at first when I saw it, I was like, why is Altenew coming out with gold brads? Like, why? Like, again, if you've been around the block long enough in card making, that used to be like all we had was like brads and eyelets. And then in this release, they have like these little mini gold brads, and I was like, okay, I guess they're bringing it back. They're for this. It all made sense once I actually like started paying attention. So I put these on top of a firm foam pad. A mouse pad would work too. And I'll link to Tim Holtz has a little like shaper kit that has a firm foam pad like this. And then I used my little Altenew Perfect Picker and pierced a hole in the center of the compass. And there's actually a tiny little debossed divot to show you that. And same with on the needle, like the black piece of cardstock that I die cut. So I pierced holes through them and then I connected them with the gold brad. So technically you can make that needle move depending on how loose you attach the brad. Because when you press the back on it, you could loosen it up a little bit. So how fun is that? So if you did it looser, you know, you could have that like spin around. Love it. Love it. So once I assembled one, like I said, couldn't stop, pulled out more cardstock and just kept making them. So the second one I made, because the first one we'll come back to, I'm going to use that on the next card, but the second one I made, this is where I used like the Misty Morning, Cloudy Sky, Nimbus, and I think I used like Dark Night as well. I think that's the color I used. Cardstocks along with black and white, and then a couple different little elements. Because like I said, there's so many options in this die sets. So you can just create to your heart's content and make every single one unique. So I did basically the exact same thing. And just adhered everything. I don't know why. The little northeast, southwest. Does anyone do that when you're like thinking about like the actual direction, like northeast, southwest? Oh, I was taught as a kid, it was never eat shredded wheat. And I had to laugh because my kids were taught something very similar, you know, learning about like directions and geography and all that kind of stuff. And it just kind of made me giggle because I was like, man, I learned that many decades ago too. So anywho, got all those bits adhered, and then I'm going to pierce down the center of these and then add the little brad. This one would look cute with a silver brad, but I actually still have some in my stash, but I just used the gold one for this. So pierce those holes through. And then if you don't have the brads or you just aren't interested, you could just adhere them into place, you know, adhere the needle, it'd be fine. And then I white heat embossed one of the sentiments from the stamp set onto, pretty sure that was Nimbus cardstock. Or Cloudy Sky. It was one of them. I white heat embossed it, and then I used the coordinating die from the add-on die set to die cut the sentiment. And on the inside of the card, I stamped another one of the sentiments with the Nimbus ink, and then adhered a couple of the elements that I die cut from the die set. And then the card front that I'd stenciled, I had trimmed that down to roughly 4 by 5 1/4, and then I adhered it to a piece of the Dark Night cardstock. I'm pretty sure it was Dark Night. I don't have it sitting in front of me, but it'll be listed in the supplies. I adhered it to a piece of that cardstock that was A2 size, so 4¼ by 5½ inches. And I used Altenew's Instant Dimension foam tape, the 1/16 of an inch thickness, to adhere that, so it just creates a bit of dimension. And then I added just a little bit, just a smidge of black splatter with my black gouache, put that on a palette, watered it down just a bit, and then splattered it on with a fan brush. And then once that was dry, the sentiment, I die cut a second piece and then adhered them together with liquid glue just to give it a little bit more dimension. And then the compass I'm going to adhere with foam tape. Now, if you want it to like move, you know, the needle to move with that brad, you would just put foam tape around like the perimeter, not over the brad. I wasn't worried about this. I didn't need it to move. So I just popped the foam tape in place. But otherwise, avoid putting any adhesive on the back of that brad so that it can, like, things can move around. So I popped that on with foam tape. I adhered the sentiment. And then I can adhere this to my card base. And this will completely cover my card base, which is a top folding A2 white note card. So 4¼ by 5½ inches. So that was card number 1. For my second card, I had embossed the white cardstock with that same embossing folder. Cut it down to A2 size, so 4¼ by 5½ inches. And then on this one, I'm using Altenew's small blending brushes, and I'm blending on the Nature's Wonders fresh dye inks, the light, the medium, and the medium dark shades. These I know I've talked about these inks before, like these specific colors. I can see them like throwing people off. I remember when they were first released, and I was like, really? Like, these are odd shades, you know? I like them. I really like them. They're just, I have nothing like them, you know? And I got a lot of ink. I got all kinds of stuff, but they're almost like a kind of gold shades, close to green gold, sort of. I just like them. I guess I would call them maybe like almost on the neutral side. So I used the lightest shade, and I pulled it up about 3/4 of the way along to create kind of an ombre look. And then the medium shade I did about halfway. And then this Sea Forest shade, which is the medium dark, I pulled, you know, about 1/4 away. And it's like you start at the bottom, and then as there's less ink on your brush, that's when I would pull it up more to create that just blend. And then once I've got enough ink on here, I'm going to pop this into my splat box. And for this one, I'm going to use white splatter. So the Altenew white gouache, stick a little bit of that on my palette, add a little water to thin it down, and then mix that up until I'm happy with the consistency of it. And then I splatter that on this background and then let that dry, which doesn't take very long. So I splattered this background with the white. And then the inside of the card for this one, I did kind of the same thing. I'm gonna stamp on this. If I had messed it up, I would have just like heat embossed the sentiment on a small piece of cardstock, cut it out, and adhered it on top. We would have been fine. So I wasn't worried. But I stamped one of the little sentiments from the set right onto this embossed card front with milk chocolate ink. And I took another sentiment from the stamp set, and I'm stamping that on the inside of my card with the milk chocolate ink. And again, all my cards are top folding A2 white note cards, 4¼ by 5½ inches. And then again, I die cut a couple elements with the die set from pretty sure that was Marshland and I think green gold cardstock, and adhere those into place. So that finishes off the inside of the card. And then I can adhere the embossed card front to the card base with the liquid glue. And then this is the one I'm going to use, that first compass that I made. And the same thing, I'm going to pop this up with the Instant Dimension foam tape just to give it that little extra something. And then I shifted the needle just a smidge to kind of point at that sentiment. I thought that was just a cute little extra touch there. So that was the second card. And then for my third card, this time I pulled in some metallic gold cardstock. And like I said, these are fun. These are fun. I made compasses, y'all. These were ridiculous. I really enjoyed putting these together. And as usual, if I had more time in the day, I would have made just a pile of them because it was fun, and there were so many options, and that is the problem sometimes. It's just like, oh, there's so much room for activities. So this one I did, white cardstock, metallic gold, and then I used reindeer moss and evergreen cardstocks to create this one. And just use some of the different little like decorative elements here. And yeah, like look, just, I guess they're not necessarily cute. You know, you guys know I love the cutesy, I love my florals, all the things, but it is really fun to shake it up sometimes and do something different. So got this one assembled, and then of course, exact same thing. I'm gonna pierce that hole in there and attach the needle with the brad because it's just, it's so good. So got that one assembled, and then for the card front, I embossed using the embossing folder a piece of the reindeer moss cardstock, cut it down to A2 size, and then I'm just blending. That's the same green ink I used on the stencil at the beginning, so the Mossy Meadow is what I started with, and this time I blended it around the perimeter, so around the edges. And then I'm going to go in with the evergreen ink and do the exact same thing. So it's just kind of going to create that sort of glow effect. So it looks like the center is like glowing a little bit. So blending that onto this background. And then once I'm happy with this blend, I'm going to add a third type of splatter. Because, you know. So for the splatter for this one, I'm using the Altenew metallic watercolors. And any metallic watercolor, you need to add water and like work it up a bit. It is not the type of thing, it's just the nature of how they are. You can't just like touch a wet brush to it and like immediately get payoff. You got to add a bit of water and like work it, and then it's good. So I'm using one of the gold shades from the palette, added a bit of water, and then worked it up real good with my fan brush. And my camera doesn't do it justice. This one is like sparkly almost. It's so pretty. And I just find when I'm like working it up, I start zoning out and I'm just like, ooh, shiny. So worked that up and then put the card front into my splat box and then splattered it with the gold. Once it's splattered, you can see like it's so pretty. It's so pretty. So added a little bit of that and then let that dry. And then, it was about, I think I trimmed it down a smidge because it's, I think, about 4 by 5 1/4. So just slightly smaller than my card base. I added the compass, and then the sentiment I had white heat embossed on the reindeer moss cardstock, and then stacked behind one other layer. And then on the inside, which I'll show at the end, I just stamped a sentiment from the set, and that was it. So I'm going to adhere that into place with the liquid glue, and that's going to finish off the final card. So if I hadn't made it really clear, I had a lot of fun playing with this kit. It's so different, and I really like that. So this is the first one where I stenciled all the things, and I've got my little compass and my sentiment, some splatter, and then the inside with another sentiment and a couple little die cut elements. And then this one where we created the ombre like ink blend and a little bit of white splatter, and then stamping the sentiment directly onto that background. And like I said, if it hadn't turned out, just would have stamped and die cut something, you know, and adhered it on top. And then the final one, we've got the green and the kind of like glowing effect. And then I just stamped the grow, explore, and create sentiment on the inside. And that finished off the cards. So like I mentioned in the intro, I'll have all the info and supply lists and everything in the description box below the video. So you can check that out below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me, for thumbs upping and commenting. It helps a ton and I appreciate it. And I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't, I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!